Hello, my name is Jennifer Fields, and I'm going to be reporting on standards-based grading for Teacher Leader Course 715. Standards-based grading, as defined by the Glossary of Education Reform, refers to the systems of instruction, assessment, grading, and academic reporting that are based on students demonstrating understanding or mastery of the knowledge and skills they are expected to learn as they progress through their education. Danielle Iamarino illustrated standards-based grading as an effective replacement for traditional-based grading. Furthermore, she reviewed relevant literature and research in support of standards-based grading as progressive and successful alternative to more conventional assessment philosophies. What exactly is standards-based grading broken down? It is a tool designed to focus student learning, help students take ownership, and increase their achievement on standardized goals. It is a method that helps teachers focus on the goals of the classroom, aligns all parts of the curriculum, and gives specific feedback about strengths and weaknesses for each student. Research shows that standards-based grading mindset paired with standard-based grading correlates to higher academic achievement. Learning goals focus on the goals of the class, the content, skills, and standards that a student must learn, a level of mastery, and patterns. When recording scores, the concern is not the cumulative grade on the test, but level of mastery the student has achieved on each concept assessed. It is considered a present score, where the students are right now. The teacher may notice the same mistakes happening with the same student, and this may indicate that they lack prior knowledge, so an intensive one-on-one session is recommended. If as a whole the teacher sees that there are still a lot of ones and twos recorded after teaching, it's time to revise before going into the next lesson. I will discuss what levels of 1, 2, 3, and 4 are later in this presentation. It is important to tie learning materials to the standards, learning objectives, learning targets, and other goals that we need to measure. Assessments. They are formative. We're not looking at points or percentages to record in our gradebook. Our activities, our tests or projects, maybe even a presentation, must be intentional and have a direct purpose to meeting the goals and standards of the class. We are assessing those goals and concepts as stated in our standards. The teachers must be intimate with the curriculum. Knowing the learning goals and standards that we are trying to achieve, teachers can be intentional with what each activity is used for. When creating tests, we'll know exactly which skills need to be assessed. When we have a design of an activity that may be great and we've used it in the past, it's important for us to now make sure that it matches the standard that we're working towards. It is important to not use if it does not relate to the standard we're trying to help students achieve mastery in. The same goes for homework and classwork. If the problems that you are assigning or given do not aid or assess learning goals, do not use them in homework or classwork. Feedback. This is probably one of the most significant parts of standard-based grading. When we are looking at students' work and we assess them on a level of proficiency, it is then important for us to provide immediate feedback to the students so they know where they are at the present time. If they have mastered the particular standard, the teacher should move to more challenging applications for that student. If they are a student who just doesn't get it, that's where this teacher wants to stop and work one-on-one with a student or a small group that is having difficulties. This is a great opportunity for self-assessment for both the teacher and the student. Once the goals of the class are clear, we can detail how well students are mastering the content. In the past, we might have said, well, you need an 82 to pass. With standards-based grading, we now pinpoint what a student needs to focus on. For example, we may tell a student you just need to work on using clear evidence to support your claims. The focus is on skills, the ability to communicate, not on points. Feedback opens the lines of communication between the teacher and the student, which are so relevant in being able to work outside in a career or college setting. Assessment and feedback methods that help teachers stay focused on goals of the class, align all parts of curriculum, course goals, and give students specific actual feedback about strengths and weaknesses are a big part of students taking ownership of their learning. As I mentioned before, standard-based assessment is a formative assessment, whereas what we are accustomed to, traditional or summative assessment, is points and percentages. When it comes to the traditional assessments, we're looking at students being able to just give us the answers back. Have they memorized how to use a formula? Can they give me that answer? Standards-based is asking students to look deeper. Okay, you know the skill. How can you apply it now to a real-world application? Are you able to do that proficiently? These assessments for standard-based are broken down into small targets. So we might have a large standard. I teach math. There are several of them. And within each standard, we have some bulleted points. And I would take each of those as small targets to master the complete standard. By doing this, I can pinpoint exactly what the students are missing. With traditional assessments, though, they get an overall grade, and there's no clear evidence whether or not a student has mastered a particular portion of the standard. Students are not clear of what their grades actually mean when it comes to traditional assessments, and the failure is permanent unless they have taken an opportunity to sit with the teacher and rework problems or retake a test. With standards-based, the communication that happens between a teacher and a student provides the opportunity for students to retry and prove that they are proficient at a particular skill. They can do this as many times as they'd like, and our goal is to get students at a 3. A 3 tells us that they have met that particular standard. In addition, by allowing the students to retry the work that we've given them, the failure is only temporary. Students, a lot of time with traditional grading, they see a D or an F and they keep getting those grades and they're like, well, forget it. I'm not going to try anymore. I can't do this. Standards-based requires us to really sit down and look at each student individually. Yes, it's going to take a little bit longer when we talk about teaching lessons and being able to progress, but at the same time, we're actually being able to advance our students as they take this ownership and become more proficient and master the topics. We can challenge them to even further concepts outside the realm of what would typically happen in the classroom. Standards-based assessment allows the classroom being teacher-centered. Teachers are considered authorities, and kids really don't want to challenge or ask questions to those they see who are superior than them. They might hold back and not talk to, not ask questions of. Therefore, it's important for us to recognize that we need to become more of a facilitator rather than a dictator of what the students should be writing down word for word. Students are intrinsically motivated, and will take ownership of their learning. They learn to self-assess through the process so that they know exactly and specifically what they have to work on so that they can get to that mastery level. Traditional assessments do not allow or encourage continuum of improvement. The kid wants their grade and nothing else. The teacher doesn't take the time to go over the test, or perhaps does and doesn't answer any questions. The student is still lacking of where their problems lie. Traditional assessments are preoccupied with numbers versus communication, and often there is no comprehensive system in place to determine the integrity of the methods for traditional assessment, making it difficult to determine whether the final grades are actual reflections of student proficiency levels. If you hand a failing assignment to a student, they don't know where they need to improve upon unless that teacher actually makes the effort. Standards-based, the teacher is not making an effort, the teacher is letting the student know exactly where the problems lie. So on this slide here that I borrowed from Schoology site, it is demonstrating, or displaying the traditional grading system versus the standards-based grading system. And once again, the standards-based system helps students understand why they got a certain score. It breaks down how they performed on each standard and details their level of proficiency. And the teachers and students are both held accountable. Curricular goals through identification of learning targets and proficiency scales are clarified at the beginning of class so students know what it takes to get a specific grade of proficiency. And we need to make sure that we are consistent with these formative assessments. This will help us track understanding of learning targets and the ability to adjust instruction as we move forward. The traditional assessments, we get one grade, and it doesn't really provide enough information for deep student engagement. Therefore, many proponents of standards-based grading system believes that this is actually going to benefit students in the long run. So how does the grading actually work? Well, we want to implement standard-based scales with a rubric that are student-friendly for each concept to be mastered. Most scales are usually from a 1 to a 4, and it reflects their skill or mastery on a particular topic. A 1, there is no understanding of the topic. A 3, the target is reached. Our goal is to evaluate the learning process and academic achievement. For those students who are at a level 1, they're going to receive practice and activities to help them move towards and reach level 2. This makes the lessons more relevant to each individual student. We want to be mindful that the grades meant to reflect academic progress actually connect to academic standards. This scale tells you a little bit further how you can identify for students what it means to be a 1, 2, 3, or 4. This does make differentiated instruction easier to implement because those that have a 1 or a 2, you know you want to go aggressively with them and work on skills. Those that have a 3 and 4, we can move on. We can challenge them with additional concepts related to what we're studying. There is definitely more engagement with this. As students see what their score is, they'll start to ask questions and create conversations that can be learning and thought-provoking for not only them, but other students as well. We are getting a true evidence of learning, a clear picture of what is and isn't being mastered, and the consistency ensured by teachers providing a rubric that establishes clear expectations and explains exactly what students need to know to master the specific concept. An example of a standards-based grading system would look something similar to this, where we had identified the student, the teacher, and let them know other ways that you can create the system of saying 4 is advanced, 3 is proficient, 2 is progressing, 1 is emerging. I thought this was interesting and that it kind of compares to what we do at the beginning of the year with Educate for Alabama when we have to do our own self-assessments as teachers and say, yeah, this is kind of where we're at on being able to do this particular skill within our own classrooms. I actually attended the Summer Institute for AMSTI in Mathematics this summer, and we actually were given samples of student work, and we were challenged in our groups to break students' work into a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then we had to justify why we thought that was. It does get a little difficult with the 1s and 2s. You know, do they really have it? Can they do it? Or they are just completely lost. And from teacher to teacher, that's going to be, you know, a slight difference. But we really should all be on the same page of what proficient means. And that's why we really need to understand what our curriculum standards are and what we need to tell students to strive for in order to obtain that 3 or that 4 when we're doing standard-based grading. There is some opposition to standards-based grading. It usually revolves around the fact that that parents and students are most accustomed to traditional grades of A through F. Stressors on teachers, being able to meet all of the requirements of students who now need additional one-to-one services in order for them to meet and surpass the bar to go from a 2 to a 3. Some say we're not preparing students for college and careers, for the real world. However, the element of feedback is proving that we are preparing them for the outside world. Students have become so ingrained with that technology and just, you know, everything going in text form that they have forgotten how to speak to one another and convey what they're trying to say. I know this happens a lot within my own classroom. A student is trying to say, what? You know, I'm trying to do this, you know, does that mean this? And I'm like, you've got to go back and, you know, start from the beginning. Use vocabulary that we use in the classroom. And that's something that we need to remind students to do in whatever subject matter it is, to use the vocabulary for that particular subject area. That's going to increase, you know, that brain recall and memories as well. There is little evidence for proficiency-based education, and that it's actually boosted student learning. There are some peaks and pits of standards-based grading, as Josh Work pointed out. His school actually moved to standards-based grading, and he identified these particular peaks and pitfalls to standards-based grading. But he said overall that his school actually has enjoyed standards-based grading, and it's actually brought a deeper connection between his students and him. He said it did take some work to get used to teaching this way and creating assessments for standards-based grading. It has become second nature now, and he's able to reuse things over and over. I looked at a standards-based grading case in Maine when they implemented and then they de-implemented quickly. Within 6 years, they went from, yes, we're going to do this, they changed how students were going to get their diplomas, to then all these different issues arrived, as you can see on the screen, and it just was not going to work for them. One of their issues was that they had come in too fast. They didn't take the time to have the organizational meetings with parents and students to let them know what they were going to be doing. It was just a requirement. This is the way we're going to do it. As it turned out, Maine in June of 2018 decided to scrap it altogether before any class would actually be graduating with a diploma that was based on standard-based grading. My resources are listed here. I do encourage you to take a look at Works and Barnum's studies and what was going on within their schools to get a deeper understanding of what was working and not working for them. And while schools are trying to implement the standards-based grading, the initial results are coming in. However, researchers and stakeholders still don't know enough about effectiveness of standards based on grading of achievement and mastery of skills required. There is little evidence that proficiency-based education has actually boosted student learning. Therefore, there is that need to continue the research and see how this is going to relate. One of the most interesting things that was noted was that those that were most exposed to standard-based grading and assessments had SAT and ACTs go down slightly. However, the students felt that they were more engaged within the classroom.